One of the ways that I know I'm getting old is I've become a huge history buff. And in particular, I love learning about Texas history. I had the pleasure of walking the site where the Goliad Massacre happened, and a nice lady from the Texas Historical Commission gave me all the details about the battle, the heroes, the villains, all the good stuff. So I hope you enjoy this video clip as much as I enjoyed hearing about the Goliad Massacre and a key part of Texas history. What can you tell this Canadian about this battlefield and historical site?
So the battle didn't actually take place here at the fort. The only battle that actually happened here at Presidio La Bahia was that of Gutierrez and McGee. So during the time that Mexico is trying to become independent from Spain, you had filibusters or pirates. And these guys came here to the fort and took it over. And for 4 months, the fort was besieged. So guns are going off, cannons are blasting. You've got the Spanish on the outside of the fort trying to get into the fort. And so, like I said, for 4 months, they were fighting over this piece of property, basically. Gutierrez and McGee were successful at hanging on to the fort. The Spanish leave. But before anything else happened, McGee dies here, and he is buried somewhere out in the plaza. Gutierrez takes McGee's men and moves off to have the Battle of Medina, which is south of San Antonio, and he ends up losing and being killed. So then you have Dr. James Long, who also comes here to the fort. Again, there's hardly anybody here, and he walks in, but this time the Spanish soldiers are faster at getting reinforcements. They come back here to the fort. They capture Dr. Long and his few men and take him down to Matamoros, Mexico, put him in prison, and he is executed there as well. So Dr. Long gets arrested and he ends up in jail and gets executed. So this is all during the Mexican Revolution. Mexico wins its independence from Spain in 1821. We start having elections. It's just like any other, republic. We're able to have a voice. But in around 1830s, Santa Anna is elected as president of Mexico. And to get elected, he's all for the federalist form of government, which was for the Constitution of 1824. However, once he was elected, he got rid of the Constitution of 1824 and then became a centralist, center to me, so what I want. And so Santa Anna becomes the dictator of Mexico, and he is tired of all these Anglos that are moving into Coahuila y Tejas, or the Texas territory, and he wants to get rid of all these vermin. And so he starts the campaign of moving all of these Anglos back towards Louisiana, once upon a time French territory, which used to technically be our territory. But then Napoleon sold it to the Americans instead of back to us. But that's neither here nor there. So when Santa Anna is trying to get rid of these Anglos, he sends troops to Gonzales, which is about an hour from here. And the colony of Gonzales has a cannon that Mexico gave to them. And it was used to disperse the natives that were trying to attack and take all of their stuff. So when Mexico wanted that cannon back, the colonists said, no, come and take it. So the Mexican troops went to Gonzales. The 32 men stood up to those troops, and they didn't get the cannon. So that was the start of the Texas Revolution. Fast forward to February of 1835, 36, apologies, and you have William Travis at the Alamo. And he was supposed to leave. Houston ordered him to leave, but he wanted to stay and face Santa Anna and his 5,000 troops. Even in this time period, there are rumors. But that still is a lot compared to 189 men at the Alamo. And so Travis stays. They try for 13 days to, well, they're pretty much sitting still until Santa Anna decides that he wants to attack. So on the 13th day, which was April 6th, I believe, they start to, Santa Anna takes over the Alamo and kills everybody there. So then Santa Anna has General Urrea heading here to Goliad, or La Bahia, to take over this fort because Colonel Fannin is in charge of this place. And so Fannin was asked to go to, or given a letter from William Travis to go to the Alamo. He doesn't make it. There's a lot more involved in that, but just suffice it to say, he just didn't make it. He stays here. Sam Houston orders him to leave this fort, and he doesn't because, again, things get in the way. He's got people over in Refugio, Irish colonists that are over there, and he's been asked to go get them. Well, he sends two guys that are not friends. You know, it's kind of like the two kids on the playground that want to play on the same monkey bars, and so they have an issue in Refugio, which is about a 20-minute drive from here, because the beginning of Urrea's men are in Refugio, so they run smack dab into the front of Urrea's light infantry and cavalry. So they're having it out. A lot of their men get killed. Colonel Ward comes back. Our king comes back, Ward is killed, I believe, and they tell Fannin that Urrea's right down the road. So, okay, let's hurry up and pack, let's get out of here. Fannin makes sure that all the cannons and ammunition are packed, and they start to ford the river. So right next to us is the San Antonio River, and so we have to cross it. Well, you have to have oxen to pull your carts that are loaded down with cannons and ammunition and all that stuff. Yeah, somebody forgot to feed the oxen. So they're not in a hurry to get out of here. They're like, yeah, you come haul this wagon. We're tired, right? But they still ford the river. They get outside of town. They get about 9 miles away from the fort when Fannin says, okay, we need a timeout. We need to let the oxen eat. So he unhitches all the wagons, lets the oxen graze, and he's kind of confident that nobody's coming because he left his cavalry at the rivers so that they could alert them to any time that the Mexicans are crossing over the rivers. Supposed to be watching their backside. And when they woke up, they realized that General Urrea's men had already forded or crossed the river. So they come and haul butt to Fannin. So this is a diorama of what ends up happening. So Fannin, because he had just rehitched the wagons to keep going and try to make it to the creek, when Horton's men come riding by and yelling, Urrea's right down the road. And so they, okay, let's circle the wagons, unhitch the oxens, and let's make a hollowed square. So this is a very common Napoleon tactic of creating a hollowed square. So you have your cannons at each one of your corners, here and here, and you've got your main part in the middle, so your food and your ammunition and everything is all in the middle, including your wounded. So this is the fighting strategy that Fannin and the men decide to take up. They kill whatever oxen are alive and they use them as breastwork or protection against General Urrea. So you've got General Urrea over here. You've got all of his light infantry. So these guys can move pretty quickly because they're not carrying anything heavy. They're not hauling anything heavy. And of course the cavalry, the men on horses. These guys are super fast also. So Urrea ends up surrounding Colonel Fannin on March 19th, and they just have it out. I mean, Fannin's got about 3 muskets to every 1 man that's inside of this hollowed square, so they're doing really well against General Urrea into the night. Now that night, Fannin calls what we call a council of war. Basically, all the officers get together. It's a staff meeting, right? So he calls a staff meeting, and they decide like what our options are. We're surrounded. We have no food. We have no water. And so, what are we going to do? Well, of course, we're going to keep fighting. And so the next morning, while Fannin doesn't have food and water, Urrea does. Fannin has plenty of ammunition and muskets and cannonballs. Urrea does not. So they each have what the opposite needs. Until the next morning, when General Urrea receives reinforcements. So his heavy artillery has caught up to this battle. And so once the heavy artillery arrive, Urrea has his men shoot off a couple of cannonballs towards the hollowed square. Thankfully, it went over the hollowed square and landed behind him. So now the men get back into a council of war or a staff meeting, and they talk about what their options are again. Now there's some debate as to who raised the white flag first. Some of the survivors say that General Urrea had the white flag, like let's talk. Some say Fannin had the white flag, hey, we're ready to talk. Regardless, they both met on the field of battle, and the Fannin ends up surrendering or capitulating to General Urrea. Once that happens, the men lay down their arms and they are marched right back here to the fort and imprisoned in the chapel. So yeah, so keep in mind that the Alamo has already happened, right? So all those men are dead. Dr. Shackelford, when they were talking about it, he was like, yeah, no, we cannot surrender. There is no way. You know what's going to happen to us. But Fannin was like, no, we need to see what the terms are going to be, and then we'll make our decision. This is a cemetery.
Oh.
So, yeah, there are people throughout this space. And again, when Goliad became Goliad in 1829, we changed our name from Presidio La Bahia to Goliad in honor of Father Hidalgo. Our name is an anagram of his name, and so they renamed us Goliad then. This has always been the parish church, chapel. And so, you know, throughout the years since the 1700s, people have been dying, and so, you know, they were buried around this building, and so that's why this still belongs to the church and not to us. So imagine you're in Fannin's company, right, or you're in his group, and you have just lost or surrendered at the Battle of Coleto Creek, and you were marched back into this building. So what we're looking at is exactly what the men saw when they walked into this space. The same ceiling is what they saw. Granted, there was no electricity, no air conditioning, no heating. These floors, these saltillo tiles did not exist. It was a very rocky, uneven floor. The pews had all been taken out and destroyed. The priests had already taken everything out of here to protect it because of everything that's going on. And so this is just a vast open space where the men were brought into and held prisoner. And in here, in this room, is where it is rumored that Colonel Fannin was placed because he had been shot in the hip at the Battle of Coleto Creek. So he was put in here, and then around here, come on down. And here's kind of what the floor looked like in this threshold. It kind of looked like that with a little packed caliche mud on it. But this is where the wounded were brought in, and the last of the wounded were brought in 3 days after the battle. So infection, gangrene, fevers, they're hungry, they're thirsty, all of this is going on with these 40-ish wounded men that were brought into this chapel. So we're in here, 400, and I know when you watch this back, it's going to be hard to explain. This is not a big chapel. It's not a very big space, but 400 men were placed in here. And according to the survivors, they were standing in here like like sardines, so one next to another. In fact, most of them write that they couldn't all sit down at the same time. They couldn't sleep all at the same time. They had to take turns standing and sitting because there just wasn't enough room for all of them. But this became their prison for the next 7 days. Under part of the surrender agreement was that they were told that they would be sent back home via ships to New Orleans, and that if they ever came back, that it was punishable by instant death. So if you get caught being back in Mexican territory, then you were just dead. So the men were okay with that. All right, fine, I won't come back. And so they were in here. The average age of these men was early 20s. The youngest documented man that was here in this chapel was 15, because that was the legal age of being a man. However, having taught middle school for 20 years, you know, you can have a 12-year-old in your classroom that's 6 feet tall and looks like a man. So in this time period of the 1830s, in 1836 or 35, you know, no one's asking for IDs to prove age. And so, you know, you're in this church and you're only 13 or 14 years old, ready to die for Texas, right? So you're ready to give up your life so that Texas could become independent. And so these men that are in here have a little ray of hope. So there is a lady by the name of Francita Alavez, who is known to us as the Angel of Goliad. So, you know, she's a mom, and, you know, she comes in and checks on these men. She goes down to the river, which is it's a steep drop off down to the river. And she'll go get buckets of water and bring them in here to the guys. And as she's walking around and giving these men some water, she's noticing that they're not all men, that they're just kids. And so she is credited with saving about 20 of them from the massacre that happened. So when they're in here, they're not all in here all day long. Some of them are taken out and worked in the fort itself. But keep in mind that the Mexican officers here, the soldiers, they're not like having a fiesta, like, woohoo, we're gonna kill a bunch of Anglos in the morning, right? They're trying desperately to get Santa Anna to change his mind about the outcome for these men. And unfortunately, on March 26, 1836, Santa Anna sends his last letter regarding these guys. And he basically says that, yeah, they better be dead in the morning. And so on Palm Sunday, March 27th, these soldiers are having, and they're all Catholic, right? They're all Catholic. They go to church every Sunday. And they're tasked with coming in and basically murdering these men because they've surrendered. And so they come in on Palm Sunday starting about 6:30 in the morning, and they start lining these guys up. The guys in this chapel have no clue what's fixing to happen to them. And so when the soldiers tell them, hey, we're gonna go gather some wood, when we're done, we're gonna take you down to Copano Bay, put you on a ship and send you to New Orleans, there was no fuss and no fight of them walking out of this church and then heading out. So this happens 3 times. They take groups of about 100, a little over 100 each, and they march them out. Nobody puts up a fuss because they believed what their surrender was, that they we're just going to do something and then they're going to send us home. When they get marched out, one group is headed towards Refugio, one group is marched south of the San Antonio River, and the other one north of the San Antonio River. When the first group gets to their destination, of course the soldiers are like, oh, no, stop, and turn around, and then the soldiers just open fire. There's no survivors from that first group. The second and third group hear what's happened to the first group. And so they have seconds to decide how they're gonna handle this situation. Some of the men turn around and say, huzzah for Texas, turn around and fight, don't die like cowards. Others, now I'm just gonna fall down in this grass, because the grass here was waist high. This was all prairie. We had buffalo down here, wolves, bears, all kinds of things that you don't see anymore. And so there I'm just gonna fall and play dead. Others were, I'm gonna head to the river, I'm gonna cross over, and I'm gonna run to Sam Houston. And others, I'm gonna run, but I'm gonna hide and I'm gonna wait. So out of 400 men, only 27 survived. That's it. And most of those were the guys that hid or that could get across the river and cross it without being shot. So those are the stories that we tell here for the Texas Revolution. But keep in mind, you've now had the Alamo and 189 men die. Now you've had 400 here in Goliad die. So people that have moved to Texas are now freaking out. They're like, oh my God, Santa Anna's gonna kill all of us, right? And so you have what's called the runaway scrape. And this is where Texas gets its character from, because you have all the men are fighting for Texas, right? So the women and the children and the elderly are the ones that are left to take care of the ranching or the farming. So they're having to pick up and do all the man work while their men are away. So when you start hearing these rumors of, you need to get out, you need to move, you need to leave, Santa Anna's coming, he's killing everybody, right? You're not gonna think twice about it. You're gonna pack up and leave, except a lot of these women didn't pack anything. They just grabbed the kids, and there's a lot of them. They pack the kids and the grandma and grandpa, and they just start walking. Keep in mind that Texas during its revolution was going through a mini ice age, and then that spring was extremely wet. Okay, and so you've got these women who are carrying their babes. They don't have any knapsacks or blankets or anything. They're carrying their babes. They're sludging through the mud. They're trying to make it to Sam Houston and Galveston, or close to Houston, right? And they're leaving, and these women are giving birth on, imagine a hurricane, right? So people in Canada wouldn't know what a hurricane is, but they're not anything to mess with. So if you're new to Texas and there's a tropical storm, ooh, let's pay attention, right? For those of us in Texas that have been here most of our lives, it's like, it's just a tropical storm, it ain't no big deal, right? We're not gonna worry about it till it gets close to Houston. Then maybe we'll think about it. So, but when it becomes a tropical or a category 1, new people to Texas are freaking out. They're like, where are we gonna go? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna take? So they're the first ones to leave because they don't know what's coming. Texans are like, I'll worry about it when it's a 4, right? And so, because it could go this way, it could go that way. So this is what the runaway scrape was like. So you had some people that left as soon as the Alamo, when they heard about what happened at the Alamo. Most people, though, waited. Like, maybe we'll win. Maybe Fanon will get it, right? But these women, most of them were caught in the Category 5 hurricane. Everything's already done. Santa Anna's coming. He's coming to kill us. He's on horses. He's going to come get us quick. So you've got, we're leaving. We're heading east. These women are giving birth on muddy side of the road patches. They're being taken advantage of. They're losing their kids. They don't have anything to feed their kids. They don't have blankets. They're freezing to death. It's still cold in Texas, and it's really, really rough. But the Texas character comes from these people, because even though I have nothing, I will give you something if that helps you, right? So, Texas is known as the friendly state, and that's where that comes from, is that having to become cohesive as a group to survive the Texas Revolution. And so, yeah, these people are leaving home, their houses are being burned, their farms are being raided, their livestock are being killed, and when they get back after the Battle of San Jacinto and we win, they come back to nothing. And so they have to start all over again. And so, I don't know if you've noticed, but in Texas, you still have those coffee shops where people meet, right? And let's go grab a cup of coffee. That's from the Texas Revolution. Anywhere you go in Texas, people will offer you at least a cup of coffee.